Welcome to Beyond the Review, customer conversations about digital transformation success, presented by Raven Intelligence. I'm your host and the founder and CEO of Raven Intel, Bonnie Tinder. Well, welcome to today's webinar on the topic of should you use a third party for your Workday deployment. I am delighted to be joined by Cameron Larkin, who is the Client Portfolio Leader at OneSource Virtual, an exclusive Workday partner that offers end-to-end services for customers. They are the most tenured and independent Workday partner in the ecosystem and been working with Workday customers since 2008. Cameron, thank you so much for joining me today. Could you start off by telling us a little bit about you and OneSource Virtual?
Great. Thanks, Bonnie. Great to be here. Yeah, so I've been with OneSource Virtual the past nearly 7 years in a few different roles. And before that, I came from a Workday customer. At the time, I was responsible for the largest Workday financials deployment in the world at the time, at NationStar Mortgage, which is now Mr. Cooper. So I've been in the ecosystem for about 9 years now. And in my current role, I'm responsible for all of our deployment projects in North America. And at any one time, we have about 150 active deployments in the US and Canada.
That's great. Well, wonderful background to have that practical experience in being on the client side as well. Many customers are thinking about Workday projects and digital transformation efforts in 2022. And for HR professionals, a software implementation is something they only do once every 5 or 10 years, or in some cases once in a career. What are some of the things that they should be thinking about as they prepare for an upcoming deployment?
Yep. No, it's a good question, Bonnie. It's an ERP deployment is an infrequent exercise, and some people have done it once or twice. A few people have done it more than that, and a lot of people have never done it. So we run the gamut in our projects. It is they come to us at OneSource for a variety of reasons. One of those is the fact that we've done more of these deployments than any other partners. And then we have this unique value proposition to customers, because once we get them up and running, we don't go away. We do their payroll processing, benefits administration, tax, garnishments, et cetera. So we have this broader business model to include our application managed services, which is kind of day-to-day maintenance of your Workday tenant, whether it's building new reports, changing security configurations, or something bigger than that when you go through what we're seeing a lot of customers going through now, an acquisition merger. So you're adding a whole new company to your tenant, and that can be a fairly involved exercise.
So the term digital transformation is used a lot. Could you talk a little bit about what this means? And is it the same thing as a software deployment?
Yeah, that's a great question too. It's really, I think of it as really different, the two, transformation and a run-of-the-mill deployment or system implementation. The context that I think about the difference is really the old, people, process, technology framework. And the technology, if you're just looking at it from a system implementation perspective and replicating what you're doing today in a new system, then it becomes lift and shift. And that's really just focusing on the technology pillar of the three. And it's really key that you focus on the people and the process aspect as well, especially as most companies are looking as they go to Workday to truly transform and become a more strategic HR organization. And what I see that as meaning is wanting to transform how you think about the people aspect, and that could be a real change in roles and responsibilities as customers are looking to become less hands-on on the activities and moving much to employee or manager self-service in the system. That makes them much less transactional and more strategic as an organization. And to do that, you really have to think about how those roles and responsibilities are going to change, and then how your processes will change within the system, how you want to route business processes, who do you want to access more information or perhaps less information in the system. And that would be security configuration view of the world.
Hmm. So that digital transformation is really all about the process and sort of rethinking how you
Yep.
do things as opposed to just moving from software to
That's
software.
right. Really, that holistic people, process, technology view.
Yeah, yeah. Why would a customer look to a third party for a digital transformation or a deployment? Some cases it's a technical process as or project as well. What are the benefits of using a third party?
Yep. So all Workday deployments will be done by a partner, whether that partner be Workday or a partner like OneSource that's a partner in the Workday ecosystem. And most of the deployments are done by partners like OneSource. But a lot of HR teams, especially smaller HR organizations, are relatively small. And they don't have a lot of people. They have day jobs that they need to maintain during a deployment project. And so it gets people thinking about, well, I need to bring some other arms and legs to bear on the project so that I can, both do the day job and do this transformation as I deploy Workday. And that can make sense in a variety of circumstances. But what we really encourage people as they think about bringing in third-party contractors into the context of a deployment is it's best to have those folks come in and focus on day job activities and let your employees on your HR team focus on the Workday deployment. And here's why. The you're looking for transformation. So you're moving away from this legacy system to Workday and you're trying to transform. There's a lot of learnings that will take place during that deployment project. And it's key that it's your employees getting that knowledge transfer, those learnings, that involvement in the project, making those key decisions on design, doing the testing validation, the data configuration validation, because they know who does what in your company. They know why things are architected the way they were. And they're going to own it when you're live. So it's better to use those third-party contractors if you feel the need to manage things in your day-to-day world, like processing your weekly payroll on your legacy system. When you process on a weekly basis, which some companies do, then that becomes immersive. You're always in a payroll cycle in that case. And so using a third party to focus on that activity while your existing payroll team focuses on the Workday project is really a good idea in the way we recommend it.
And, in the cases that they work with, a OneSource Virtual, what are the critical things that they should be focused on? Or maybe even more importantly, what are the critical things that they should do to plan prior to working with OSV to set themselves up for success?
Yep. And so um, you're making a meaningful investment of dollars and people's time as you're making this journey. And so really thinking ahead on, you've already made the decision in this case to invest money in Workday. And so as you look at making those investments of time, thinking in advance, who's going to be focusing on the project and who's going to be doing those day-to-day activities. And of the people that are focused on the project, the areas that we really focus on, encourage people to focus on the project success is, what does your data look like? Do you have a data guru on your team that really understands, how your system is architected today? Who will support the testing effort? Who do you need to go through the Workday training early in the project? And who will be the sponsor of the project? And so that's really a key, engagement of the senior leader that owns this transformation engagement throughout the project is really something that we need throughout the project for it to be successful, in an area we really encourage people to think about in advance.
Yeah. So really defining the roles that each team member is going to play
That's
and,
right.
sort of what their stake in the project is and what they'll be
Yep.
responsible for.
And something I'd add on to that too is the thinking in advance. A partner like OneSource will do the overall engagement or project management of the effort. So that's really taken care of. But what we need on the customer side that faces off with our engagement manager is a project coordinator.
Mhm.
And a lot of customers we see feel a little intimidated by that because a lot of people in HR organizations don't have a project manager in their title, or maybe they don't have that kind of experience, but we don't really need a full-time project manager. You're really looking for somebody to take on key project coordination activities. And this is really something that you want to focus on at the front. And it's key that that be an employee versus a contractor.
Mhm.
So some of the key things that this person will be doing is making sure that key decision makers are in important meetings where decisions need to be made, working through the project timeline and budget with the OSV engagement manager. This person as an employee knows who does what in the company, so can help with that cat herding to make sure that those people are involved at the right times during the project. And then finally, this person has the most cross-functional view of the project, whether it be HCM, payroll, benefits, time tracking, absence. They touch all the functional areas. And it's key that all that learning stay with your organization after you're live. And
Yeah.
if you use a third-party contractor in that role, that knowledge really disappears. So we really discourage that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So project leader slash cat ring, yeah, cat herder, for
Yes,
sure.
yes. Important skill.
Yes, for sure. So, on the topic of, a project leader, deployments seem like they are a full-time job. Is that a case? And, does a customer need to have someone 100% dedicated to deployment? Are they able to do their regular, job at the same time? What are your recommendations there?
Yep, yep. That's a great question. And it's not right up front. It's not a full-time activity during the project. That is, your people will not be 100% dedicated. There will be times during the ebbs and flows of the project where they'll be more dedicated. So, for instance, your project coordinator will be very involved in the project during the planning phase. And then you'll have some of your key functional experts involved during the architect phase as we make some key decisions on how the system will be configured. And then as we move to configuration and prototype phase of the project, most of that work is on our side, on the OSV side. So there's a lot less work on the customer side. So you kind of get that up and down. And then after we configure, then there's a lot more activity from your functional users on the testing side. And then again, after testing, then, the deployment activities when we're building your final tenant, that becomes mostly OSV oriented. So there's the ebbs and flows during the project. I'd say for the project coordinator, that's going to average about 20 hours a week through the project. Again, sometimes 10, sometimes maybe 30.
Mhm.
And for other functional experts, for instance, your payroll manager will be fairly dedicated, approaching 100% for the payroll parallel test portion of the project, but certainly other parts of the project, they're nowhere near that dedicated. So the larger organizations have more people that they can kind of bring into the project in various roles so that everybody's a little less dedicated. Smaller teams, you might have two people in your organization become relatively dedicated during the project in a small team like that. So it really does depend.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned this critical area of knowledge transfer. Can you expand on this a little bit? Why is it so important during a deployment? And, what is it that you can do if you're, on the customer side to ensure that this is cared for appropriately?
Yep, yep. It really is key because a SaaS deployment like Workday, software as a solution, is a very different deployment than the old school ERP where you invited a systems implementer in and spent, millions of dollars. They essentially took the design requirements, they went off and did the work, and then they came in and trained you and handed over the keys. A Workday deployment is much faster, so you get to return on investment much quicker. There's more involvement of your team, and that's the knowledge transfer part. So your involvement in from kickoff through testing, there's all this important learning that's taking place, including taking key Workday delivered training so that you understand how to process and settle transactions within Workday. And all those touch points during the project, you're learning how to own the system down the road and make those changes. One of the neat things about Workday is you don't need to bring in a consultant or a company like OneSource to make important changes to the system down the road. Security settings, developing new reports. These are all very doable by the customer. Some customers still choose to use a company like OneSource to do that for them. But the learning during the course of the deployment allows you to take those keys and drive that journey on your own. And that lowers your overall cost of ownership of Workday.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say just in general, the value of Workday? What is the response from your customers through the process about the software itself?
Well, I'd say, one of the most interesting things that we hear in this now COVID world as we move towards post-COVID is, we could not have done what we needed to do during COVID in any other system other than Workday. So this ability to make changes on the fly, with very lean teams, right? Teams got even leaner during COVID. And it's one of the unique aspects of Workday, the usability of it, the ability to make fast changes. For instance, organizations had to furlough employees, and that process became very easy because you had the Workday system to work on. You didn't need to bring in a bunch of consultants to help you through that process. And then obviously the value of Workday from an employee experience perspective is superior to anything that's out there. Before Workday, I came from ADP where, if I was to promote somebody or give somebody a raise, I had to have an HR person physically come and sit next to me and walk through the process in ADP because it just simply was not intuitive. And those are processes that are, like split second, kind of processes for me as a manager in the system. And then it follows through an approval process. So it's very hands-free for me.
Mm-hmm. And your customers at OSV span the globe. So you're doing implementations both in the United States as well as Europe. Is that correct? And you talk a little bit about the sort of the demographics of and the nature of your projects for Workday.
Yep. And so it's really interesting how many of our customers have affiliates or operations around the globe. It's probably a third of our customers, for instance, that we will deploy Workday for them in the United States, but they also have 20, 100 people in Canada or a 25-person operation in India. And so the international nature of Workday and the ability to deploy around the world in these projects is amazing. And we have an operation, in Europe with OneSource, where we have offices in London and Derry, Northern Ireland, to help facilitate those European operations. And the neat thing with Workday is you don't have to have, implementation boots on the ground to deploy in an international location. That's the SaaS world that we live in.
Yeah. And I know the reviews that we see at Raven Intelligence in so many cases aren't, even if they're headquartered in the US, have the touch the UK and EMEA
Right.
and beyond APJ in some cases. And so many of the reviews that we have as well aren't just phase zero implementations. There's other aspects of the customer journey that OSV is helping with. And can you describe, once a customer is live on the product, what after that does a third party, do? What else can they help a Workday customer with?
Yep, yep. Well, the average customer that we have has multiple projects with us in deployment. So most of our customers will choose to have a waved deployment. So they'll go live with HCM, payroll, benefits, absence, time tracking, and then decide some either fairly immediately or later to go live with Workday Learning, expenses, Workday Financials. So we have multiple projects, even after a customer is live, that when we do a great job, they'll come back and ask us to deploy a new SKU or new functionality for them. And then again, a neat part of our business model, because we don't go away
Mhm.
after deployment. Most of our customers have services attached with us post go live. And what that means is we process their payroll. We, do their benefits administration, process their garnishment. We do tax filings for almost all of our customers. And then, of course, most of our customers do choose to look to us to do application managed services. And that is kind of day-to-day changes to the tenant, whether it be building new reports, making security configuration changes in the tenant, adding new work tags, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things that we can do to help that customer. So we want to do a great job for them when we bring them live, because again, we don't go away. We have this, end-to-end, hopefully lifetime relationship with the customers.
And we see evidence of that relationship with customers through the peer reviews at Raven Intelligence on OSV projects. We also have found that overall service delivery rates, customer satisfaction, this idea of scoping precision, all of those at OSV exceeds your peers in the Workday
Great to
ecosystem.
see.
And how, what is, could you talk a little bit about why you feel this is the case?
Yep. And I think of it in the same people process technology framework that creates this differentiated, better experience with OneSource. So from a people perspective, it's true that we have the most tenured consultants that work with customers to get them live than any other partner, because we've been at this longer than any other partner. So that's from a people perspective. From a process perspective, we take the standard Workday deployment methodology, and we've added a number of really interesting enhancements to it. So from a process perspective, at the beginning of our projects, we have a process called Catalyst that helps customers get out of the gates at kickoff with more knowledge and more confidence to start their Workday deployment journey. We attach Workday Hypercare to all of our deployments, and that's some additional post go live support. So as you're getting your feet in a new environment in Workday, we have additional processes that help support that. Those are just two of the processes. We have a number of other areas we've added that really differentiate us. And then from a technology perspective, it's really about tool sets that are unique to OneSource deployment. Our EXL tool helps with the transformation of your legacy data and loading that data into Workday. We have another tool set, the Tenant Build Manager, that we use that ensures quality tenant-to-tenant builds during the deployment process, because the process moves from tenant to tenant during the deployment process. It's part of the unique Workday methodology. And then we have another neat tool called OSV Hub that functions as our collaboration point for all project documentation and is used by both the OSV consultants and the customer team. And this is where we load our testing results, the project plans, the design documents, et cetera. So everything is in one place. We make that as easy as possible.
That's great. So yeah, and the tools that you mentioned and the technology that really enables that consistency of experience from customer to customer. Again, we see that echoed in the results on the reviews as well. So that's great to hear.
Yep.
In closing, what are some final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd give a customer who's planning for an upcoming deployment?
Yep. And we get asked this question all the time during the sales process. At some point during the sales cycle, the customers get kind of sick of talking with just salespeople and they want to talk with the operators. They want to talk with the people that are going to get them live. And they ask that question, what should I be thinking about? And there's really four things that I recommend consistently. It's one, the sponsorship attachment and engagement throughout the project is key. It's really important for the customer project team to be looking up and seeing their boss, typically the CHRO, intimately involved in the project, helping make decisions, encouraging the team. The second area is, you really need to make sure you have your data guru, your data Yoda engaged on the project, who the person that understands your legacy system data structures, why decisions were made, because that mapping from your legacy system to Workday is one of the more challenging aspects of a deployment. A third area is making sure your team takes the Workday provided training early on. So it's as part of the sales cycle, customers will hear from Workday about these different classes, for different functional areas. There's one for your core HCM owner. There's another for your payroll managers, another for your benefits administrator. Take that training early on in the process, so you really start to learn the Workday terminology, system navigation, et cetera, early on. And then finally, really making sure that people have the time to focus on testing. There's various different phases of testing: unit testing, end-to-end testing, payroll parallel testing. Each of those are key areas of knowledge transfer, and you really need that focused time. So those are the four things that we talk about early on.
I love it. So ensure you have executive sponsorship. Make sure you have your data Yoda or your guru mapped
Yep.
out. Take your Workday training early and seriously, and then finally focus on testing. I think
That's right.
those are
And all
definitely,
those can lead to a predictable success on the project.
yeah, I love it. Well, great words of wisdom there. Well, Cameron, thank you so much for joining me today and for providing some of these insights on Workday deployments. And we'll look forward to seeing more great reviews for OneSource Virtual at ravenintel.com.